That's a pretty solid list. Not every single one of those movies are fantastic, in my opinion. There's a couple of ones that could take a hike, but 48 Hours, Wrath of Khan, even Tootsie is a pretty great comedy.
You don't like that, Rocky?
Rocky's okay. Like, it's the Mr. T one, so it's pretty good. Porky's I don't like. It's dumb.
No?
Nah. Officer and Gentleman is...
Richard Gere?
Yeah, beyond Louis Gossett Jr. I was just kind of whatever with that movie when I watched it. But, and then after all that, then comes Poltergeist. So it's got good company, you know, for being the 8th highest grossing film of the year. That's some good company to be in. But I was struck by how much more E.T. made than even the second film on the list. Usually the second film on the list is within spitting distance sometimes.
Yeah.
But this wasn't even close.
Well, I think E.T. was just a cultural milestone.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. So that's where Poltergeist ends up. I mean, popular enough. It ended up getting 2 sequels, which we mentioned, which I don't think are very good. The second one especially. I don't like. I think it just kind of explains a little too much.
Is 3 like...
3 is creepy. 3 has some creepy stuff in it. It takes place like in a high rise.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's the one I've seen more of. I saw that a few times when I was like junior high school age. Haven't seen it in years. I could probably go back and watch that too, if that's on HBO Max or AMC or something right now. But I know that I remember when I saw it at that age being creeped out by some stuff that's in it. But I'd have to go back. It gets pretty decent reviews. It's pretty well received. It obviously becomes one of the best films of the year, and later on kind of is held up as a horror classic. Even though you and I kind of spoke earlier, I don't think it's so much a horror movie as it is kind of an effective, scary thriller.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to like an all-out horror film, in my opinion. That doesn't mean I don't love it any less, though, because it's still one of my favorite scary movies to go with that. But
it's one of those kind of hybrid films. The way that Ghostbusters, you can look at it as a horror comedy because of like
exactly.
it rides that gray area, you know.
Yeah. And it's kind of a dark adventure film in some respects.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about you asked me if I had seen like the Siskel and Ebert review of Poltergeist, in which I hadn't, but I knew that Ebert liked it, gave it I think 3 out of 4 stars.
Kind of, but he was like kind of like mocking it a little bit, where he's like, yeah, it's good, it's fun, but like you don't necessarily have to waste your time with it. It's like a backhanded comment.
Yeah, that's a great way to get people to see the movies. To tell them, oh, it's good, but you mean don't feel the need to waste your time. I know that he did. He did give some praise to the movie, not so much because of the special effects, but because of it's kind of told from like this family's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we put this family in this insane situation and see how they react to it. Some other reviews called it a great ghost story, great effects. Said that a lot of the effects are eerie and beautiful, but often gruesome, as we talked about with the scene in the kitchen. And then one of the other guys that writes for the Village Voice, Andy Saris, had said that, you know, he really liked that when Carol Ann has lost the parents, the 2 children, they come together, and there's like this kind of family bond that's strong and larger than life, and kind of is what rescues Carol Ann, is the family bond between them, and not so much the parapsychology stuff, not so much even Tangina, and you know what she has to say and what she has to do with the story. It's the family. It's Diane and Steve, you know, fighting to get their daughter back. We know that Siskel did not like it.
No, not at all.
Said he liked the suburban life. He said that's all correct, but he says, when the scary stuff happens, it just gets silly, which I wholeheartedly disagree with.
I think he also was shitting on The Howling too, because I watched them
Really?
go back and forth about The Howling when we did that show.
That's another one from '82, right?
Mm-hmm.
See, I told you '82 is a pretty decent year for horror films. Did Ebert like The Howling and Siskel did not?
If I'm thinking about the correct one, yes. Yeah, it was the same. Siskel was just like, oh, it's just kind of like weird and gross and like unnecessary.
Siskel was always the more picky of the two.
But then sometimes he will like surprise you and like this really like kind of raunchy film that you would think you would hate.
He's like,
and then
Deuce
it's like
Bigelow, Male Gigolo, is
Yeah.
the best movie of the year.
They'll like flip the script or whatever sometimes on each other. But it was always interesting watching them too.
Wasn't
And Roper too was interesting.
Roper was more of like, was kind of the in-between.
Uh-huh.
But I could have sworn, I could be wrong. I think Siskel said that Babe, Pig in the City was like the best movie of 1998 or something.
Really?
I could be wrong. But I remember it was like some real like left field movie that he said was like the best film of the year. So we'll have to go and look that up. But the Poltergeist kind of becomes like another... It takes on this life of its own and becomes, a great film, one of the best of the year. It actually was nominated for 3 Academy Awards.
Mm-hmm.
Well deserved. Score, visual effects, and sound effects editing. It lost all 3 to E.T. We talked about the Jerry Goldsmith score, which is great, but I can't argue with the John Williams score from E.T.
Winning, yes.
Which is amazing. That's a great score. But effects-wise, I think Poltergeist wins, or should have won. E.T.'s got great effects, but they're more practical.
Yeah, there's more. I think there's... it's just Poltergeist tends to be a little more impressive with what it's trying to do, and it goes a little bit higher, you know what I mean? Whereas E.T. is a little bit more grounded, and there's things happening, but it's more based on like character driven as opposed to, these entities that we're seeing.
Because the ghost effects, coming with the ghost coming down the stairs in the scene, and everything in the climax, which is awesome. I think that was more deserving of a win than E.T. But I know that it did win a British Academy Award, the BAFTA, for its visual effects. So good for them on that one. But that's Poltergeist. I think that covers it, honestly. You asked me just before we went on air, what's the better of the two? Which one would you prefer? Poltergeist or E.T.?
I think it would have to be... It would more pertain to like what kind of mood I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you want like this kind of existential dread with Poltergeist, or like a more family drama, kind of emotionally charged, if you will. So they have their separate strengths. For me, I think they're kind of like on a par with each other in a lot of ways. So it's really hard to say one or the other. But yeah, I did say that I think maybe I would lean towards E.T. a little more, just with the how it is, like you were saying, it's from the perspective more of Elliot.
Yeah. There's more. We were talking about the interaction among the kids, and you said that kind of makes E.T. a bit stronger, especially when you see it at a younger age.
Yes.
As I did. I told you E.T. was the first film I saw in the theater as a kid, so I got real strong connection to that movie. And yeah, you're seeing it as a child, and the film is about a child and his bond with this alien. So that's probably more relatable, especially when you see it at that young age. But I agree, like it's I would always say E.T., but being put on the spot and being asked about that when you and I spoke prior to air, it's like, yeah, thinking back on it now, like that's kind of a tough choice to make because Poltergeist is so goddamn good too. But in the end, it's kind of hard to argue with what E.T. does, even if it's a little manipulative emotionally. But it's still a fantastic film. And by the way, did you know that Drew Barrymore had auditioned for the Carol Ann part in Poltergeist?
I didn't know that.
Auditions for Poltergeist, doesn't get it, but because Spielberg was so impressed with her, that's how she ends up in E.T.
Imagine if the roles were switched.
Yeah. I don't know, like I think both those actresses are pretty great in their films. Even at that young age, you know, what are they, 4, maybe 5 years old?
Carol Ann, when she's like, or O'Rourke, when she's her bird has just passed away, and she does this big dramatic like burial.
Yeah.
And then she's like death completely goes over her head, and she's like, "Can I get a goldfish now?"
Yeah, she's piling everything into the makeshift coffin, the little cigar box.
Uh-huh.
You know, and it's, oh, here's a blanket for when he gets cold. Here's a Twizzler for, you know, when he gets hungry. There's something else that she throws in the box.
There's like a rose or something?
A rose,
yeah.
You know. So because it's a cigar box, so it smells like a cigar, even though it's kind of implied later on that that's where they keep their weed. Because you see him, like, Steve and Diane kind of smoke. She's smoking, and it looks like he's rolling one. Mm-hmm. And it's out of that same cigar box, or the same type of cigar box.
Yep.
And there's another funny part we didn't talk about where just when they're having breakfast, and there's the weird thing where the glass, Robbie's glass, the bottom kind of falls out. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, they have to get up and go to school, and just before he gets up from the table, he picks up the spoon, and the spoon is all bent, and he gives it that look, and then they take off, and Carol Ann's like sitting in front of the TV that's on the kitchen counter, and she's sitting super close, watching the static, you know, communicating with the spirits. And then when Diane walks by, she sees that she's sitting close to the static. She's like, oh, you know, don't sit so close, you'll ruin your eyes, you know, watching that. And she switches the channel, and it's like a full-on war movie.
Yeah.
And she just walks away. There's that, and there's the scene where it's like that same scene where Dana leaves to go to school, and the construction workers working on the pool are like catcalling her and all that, and, you know, she does a little, not dance, but, you know, little action with her arms, and then ends up flipping them off. And she leaves, and Diane's watching it through the window, and she laughs at Dana, but doesn't really say anything or care that the construction workers were like ogling her daughter and making like sexual connotations about her.
Well, what about the guy who's like sneaks in the window? She doesn't even care about that. He's like eating,
like tasting the spaghetti sauce or something, and like having some coffee.
Yeah. She closes the window and kicks him out, but it's like, that's gross. That's unacceptable behavior.
So it's like just after that the chairs, you know, she pushed all the chairs in, told the kids, make sure you push the chairs in. Mm-hmm. And then she comes back into that dining room kitchen area, and the chairs are all pushed back
perfectly.
Yeah, and then, you know, she pushes them all in, goes to do something, is talking to Carol Ann, and turns around, and
they're stacked
all on top of the table, which is a really cool practical effect because the camera just pans